Hey, Fly Girl. I'm René Vengelsdorf, Aviation CEO, FAA board alum, and high performance coach. Whether you're chasing your first discovery flight or leading at 40,000 feet, this show is your runway for bold career moves, real mentorship, and stories from women rewriting their flight plan. From the cockpit to the control tower, we're building the future of aviation one fly girl at a time. Welcome to the Fly Girls Guide podcast.
I am so happy to have you on the podcast, Cat. You and I have known each other for a while. I've watched your career evolve from being at an FBO to now doing something incredibly exciting. Will you please tell us what you do now?
Absolutely. It was August 1st of last year when I started this new role. Coming from a background of 14 years on the FBO side, this was a change of pace for me. And little did I know when I had the first conversation with our president and owner, I thought I would be stepping into, another aviation role, but it's fun to see that I live in two different worlds now. Our organization is full air and ground organ recovery for the transplant community. So essentially, these organs and these precious gifts have to get taken to and from certain locations from a donor to then be taken and put into a recipient. And so our ground services get surgeons and teams to and from the airport. And then we also do local recovery also, but essentially get those surgeons to the airport. Our airplane then takes off to said location, picks up that organ, and then they get back in and they're straight back home for the surgeons and the team to get to the recipients for somebody to have another chance at life. So very mission driven and purpose filled every single day. And I'm just so blessed to have this new opportunity and kind of a new lens on aviation.
I love it. So what does your day-to-day look like?
It is all over the place. We are a smaller operation, so we currently have 34 employees, and essentially my role is to help run the flight department with our director of operation. But I also live in the management world where I am educating aircraft owners on the many benefits of management. But in addition to that, our business model really brings them a cost offset to their asset, and they're doing a greater good with their airplane when it's not flying, when they're not on their personal missions. And then on the other hand, I am diving into the transplant world where, I've started to build relationships and knock on doors and do some cold calls to figure out who our true customers are, what their pain points are, and how we can better assist them and position ourselves to really be the easy button. We always say that in-house, that we just want to be the easy button and the ones that do it right and do it, on time.
Oh my gosh. So I'm hearing you say a lot of things that you do. One is you're constantly learning new skills and trying to improve things to reduce friction for the ultimate people that you're trying to serve here, which are organ recipients. You're doing a sales role of really getting new aircraft owners to sign up for your charter certificate, essentially, so that they can have their aircraft used to help save lives when they're not using it for their business.
Yep.
And you're also doing a lot of internal management, making sure things go smoothly, kind of a logistics person within the company to make sure that pilots and aircraft and communications are happening really in a very tight time frame sometimes. So what an interesting job.
It's been awesome. And it's funny, coming from the FBO side, I did dabble in the management at Business Jet, and I did dabble in some of the charter sales. But when I first got approached by Steve, our president, for this role, the first thing I said was, Steve, I've never ran a flight department. And he said, Cat, but you led, you're a leader. And so that calmed my nerves, and knowing it was, another role that I would be learning a ton and, taking a deep dive into some unknown, but along the way, educating myself and leaning on my team who are the experts and the pilots to really help me get in line and just help be a better leader.
One of the things that I think is likely a skill, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what you think are the essential skills, but one thing I really see as a skill that's necessary for this role for you is being adaptable and being able to listen and learn and adapt pretty quickly. What are some of the other skills that you feel like you've had to grow or that you already had that you were able to put into play in this position?
Communication, I think, is key, and that is in every aspect of aviation, especially the safety piece, right? I feel like I have done a pretty good job about communicating throughout my different roles. This one more so, right? I had to raise my hand and ask the dumb questions when I didn't know, just to make sure we were making the correct decisions and we were all staying on track and staying safe and in line. Adaptability is one of them. I think, another trait that some folks, they say that they have, but they don't truly mean it, is a want to learn and really, take what you learn and it soak in so you can be better and you can help mentor and coach and just be a better leader. I feel like learning and professional development is essential, and it's almost like a muscle. You have to continue to learn because these different skills or different ways of managing or leading are ever evolving, and you want to stay on track. And just like working out, you want to flex that leadership and that professional development muscle.
So going back to developing some of those muscles early on, I understand that you played basketball in college. How does being a collegiate athlete help you in your day-to-day job?
From a very young age, I was told what to do, right, by coaches, and keeping my teammates accountable and them doing the same with me. So I think very early on, I learned what it truly meant to play as a team or be a good teammate. I think most connections are grown and you grow closer with those around you when you are going through the hard things, when you're in the trenches, you're in the mud together, you're losing together, but you're also winning together. And so I think that's really given me a step up at maybe having a little bit of a natural leading mentality when it comes to things, especially with the communication. Like I mentioned, I played a Division II college basketball at Eastern New Mexico University, where I was a captain, and I loved being in that role, and I loved being someone that others looked up to for guidance or that extra pat on the butt saying, hey, I know you missed that shot, but on to the next one, right? And just continuously being that light.
I've seen you do that in so many different ways as I've watched your career in aviation over the years. And one of the things that I would say I admire the most about you, and I think that it probably is what caused Steve to want you to work there, is that you reach out to other people. You are a super connector. You raise your hand to do the hard job, but you also encourage others around you to pick up roles that are a little bit outside of their comfort zone as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you develop that as a leader and what you look for in others to kind of promote them into leadership roles?
Thank you so much for saying that. I've always said if I'm helping one person a day, I think I've done my job for the day. I think that started with me early on with my coaches and their development and their push, because coaches are put in a position where they know where you are at your absolute best, and they're going to push you to be your absolute best. I was very, very blessed when I joined the aviation community back in 2011. Jamie Santiago Munoz, who I get to office at her FBO every day now, she brought me on and hired me on the flight line. She was a servant, or is a servant leader who cares so much about others. And she was one that very early on saw the potential that I had, and not only just the love for others that I had, but that I had the skills and the determination that if I wanted to, I can make it far in this industry. And man, that girl would push me on the daily. I'd always ask for more, and she would push back and she would give me more. And I would, ask for more responsibilities and she would give me more. I think she did it in such an empathetic and loving way that the way that I saw her lead, I told myself, I want to be just like that. I want others to look at me like I look at Jamie. And so I think between, playing ball and being just in sports my entire life, and then having, those mentors very early on, that's what pushed me to want to do that for others.
I love that. What do you feel like has been the biggest challenge in your aviation career? What have been some of the things that have been like, wow?
And that is a great question. I feel like early on, I wasn't enough, or I thought I wasn't enough. And I also, stepping into aviation as a young professional, I wanted all the titles and I wanted it now. And I think I was just so ambitious, but I didn't realize that it took time to build that expertise and to build kind of that track record to make your way up, but also through that journey of pushing forward and climbing the ladder per se, failing and making mistakes and realizing there was growth on the other side. And so I think, challenging my mindset was probably the most challenging.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that from a practical standpoint. How did you get to this place where you're essentially facilitating the saving of lives? Where did you start?
Oh, man. I think early on, I don't like being told no. And so, early on, I would just push through the naysayers, push through the folks who told me to stay in my lane when I was asking to, learn how to tow or learn more about the flight line or learn more in an area that I wasn't necessarily in. I've always had a passion for people, so it's kind of serendipitous that I am now in a role where I wake up every single day and I have a piece of helping others and having an impact on others. So, but I think early on, it was really pushing forward, challenging the status quo, challenging this is how we've always done it. And to some extent, pushing where females do exist in this space. And I think that ultimately led me to more leadership roles. But this one in particular, I think it was my love for others and the impact that this company has, right? There are very few operators in our space that do what we do. And my hat's off to our owner and president. He lost his dad when he was 12, and his dad was an organ donor. His dad went on to save 4 different lives. And so that was his first touch of organ donation. And later in life, after, he went to the military, he went to school, he had a few different careers in finance and tech, he came across this 135 and saw where the 135 operator at the time had done some organ runs. And this is where the stars aligned. And he said, this is what I'm going to dedicate, our company in this space to. And so I am just one of 34, employees that get to serve a higher purpose every single day.
I love it. So you started on the flight line, though. Your first job in aviation was fueling airplanes and towing airplanes and directing traffic on the ramp.
And I loved every second of it. The gals that I worked with early on, we were all cross-trained. So we could work customer service where we were, paying pilots out and taking care of the catering and restocking, the refreshments in the front. And I would, not that I didn't love it, but there were days where I was at the front desk and I'm like, I wish I was outside towing airplanes with the guys. Because there was something about the buzz and the organized chaos of what an FBO and a ramp can look like on those busy days. And just, again, going back to my comment about when you're in the trenches and you're doing hard things with others, your bond with them as a team just gets stronger and stronger. And so the relationships that I built over time on the flight line are some of my fondest memories.
So when did it move, and what did you move when you moved from the flight line and being a CSR up within the company? What did you start doing next?
I held multiple roles in between. So started on the flight line, I was CSR. I then became a trainer. So I was able to use my love for others and my love for teaching and mentoring in that aspect where I trained our girls on CSR and the flight line. And I started asking for more. The marketing coordinator role opened up. I was a sports communications background, so I did want to do some PR. So marketing, I felt I was very comfortable with, and I felt like I could adjust with, projects. And Jamie promoted me into that role, and I had an opportunity to then start traveling to a lot of the shows like MBAA and being plugged in with North Texas Business Aviation Association, writing content for newsletters. And I think that was pivotal for me because I ended up becoming more of the face, right? I was more customer faced and I was also the media. I kickstarted our social media. And so that was a ripple effect into then me, a management role came about, took that on to where I was doing more of the FBO sales. So track and tail numbers that were going down the street to our competitors, writing down tail numbers and figuring out how can we get them to come over to us and at least present them the option of here are the many benefits of business jet. Would love for you to, come use us. And so that's where I feel like my sales really developed, and I was cold calling, having hard conversations with customers that maybe had a bad experience or so then diving into more of fuel pricing, our fees, and then ended up ultimately managing our CSR teams and our line service team. So a lot of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts, lots of opportunity for advancement, and lots of opportunity to learn new job skills, which I think is something that makes you tick, right?
Oh, yeah. I think I was very blessed in those different roles because business jet, they understood and saw my value. And so they wanted to pour into me professionally for that growth. And I'm forever grateful.
So, Kat, if someone's thinking about joining aviation or getting into a role where they would be able to do the kind of business development that you're doing now, where do you recommend that they start? What kinds of experiences would you recommend that they gain early on in their career to be successful?
Sure. First and foremost, do as much research as you can for what you might think you want to do, right? I know that I've gone down a few paths that weren't the right decision for me, but I think knowing what I didn't like pushed me closer to what I did like and what I was passionate about. First and foremost, you want to find something that fills your cup. You wake up every day and you enjoy what you do. It's always been a goal of mine to live a purpose-filled life, and finding a role that fills your cup is essential. So do as much research as you can about the different roles in aviation. Find people in those roles and reach out to them, whether that's through friends, whether that's through other connections in aviation, or start Googling and finding people on LinkedIn. Start connecting and start sending straight messages to, VPs and presidents, if that's what you want to do, and ask them, what are some of the steps they took, and a little bit more about their day-to-day, their role, and what they don't like about that role to maybe help answer some of those questions.
So what don't you like about your role? Speaking of that,
any job is a job, and you deal with personality conflicts, and you deal with some of those 8% conversations, right? That are the hardest to have when you coach and you mentor and you put employees through PIPs and they may not be keeping up as they should, and having those harder conversations about the future of their role or with them with the company. And so those are the hard days, but everything else is, I would say, fantastic. One more thing while I'm thinking about it. Early on in my career, it was it was a game changer for me to get involved with our local regional group, along with the MBAA Young Professionals Council. These people have pushed me to be better every single day, working on projects that get me out of my comfort zone. I sit on the advocacy committee through MBAA YoPro Council, and government and history wasn't my forte in school. And so I had to really dig in and start learning regulations and learning more of some of the things that folks are working on at Capitol Hill, and how my voice matters at the end of the day throughout the industry, with some of the changes that we're trying to see in aviation and in the industry as a whole. So get involved, find a mentor, and volunteer. I've always found when I volunteer, I find like-minded others who essentially want to help, and there's just a cohesive bond that starts, and then who knows, they may know somebody that could be your next employer, or help be a guiding light to what you ultimately want to do.
I love that. If you have one piece of advice, you've given a lot of pieces of advice here, and I love the volunteering recommendation is really great. I've gained some of my best leadership experience in volunteer role that I've then been able to bring back to my aviation career, and that's really rounded me out as a leader. And so I advocate for that as well. If you have kind of a mantra that you live by, or like one phrase that you would say is really important, what is that?
It started with my dad, who I unfortunately lost in 2017, but he was my hero. He was my dude, and somebody that I looked up to for his servant heart. He was in law enforcement, but served the community as a sheriff for many years. At the end of the day, if I was having a hard day, or if I was going through a rough time, or even a silly breakup, or whatever the case was, every time I ended a conversation with my daddy, he would say, "Keep on keeping on." And it didn't matter what was going on. Some of the toughest times that you go through make you stronger. And that was essentially his definition of just keep on keeping on. And so that's something I've lived by. I tell that to my son all the time. And it's funny, the other day, Steve, our president, with our leadership team, sent us a message, because we've had a lot going on lately. And he just sent some encouraging words and just kept telling us, keep our head down, keep the purpose, in view, and let's just keep on keeping on. And I was just like, you have no idea how close to home this is. And so I shared with everyone how close that was to me and about my daddy. And so, again, keep on keeping on.
I love that your work ethic is coming back around in your growing up years, your formative years, and then just to have the validation that you have the same values as the leader of the company that you're working for is really powerful. And I think that's also something to look for in an employment situation. I think that's great. Cat, thanks so much for sharing with us your job and your advice and your vision, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you. And thank you for all you do for the community and for especially women in aviation. It's much appreciated.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. For additional resources, head over to flygirlsguide.com. If you're inspired to pursue a path in aviation or want to support the women who do, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if today's conversation sparked something for you, share it with a friend. It's one of the best ways to grow the Fly Girls Guide community. Until next time.